What does it really mean to wrestle with God? We're going to dive into that idea, unpacking a central theme from Jordan Peterson's work. And we're going to do it all by looking at a single, incredibly powerful story from the ancient world. This line from the poet Gerard Manley Hopkins, man, it just absolutely nails the feeling, doesn't it? This isn't some polite debate. It's a raw, exhausting, and deeply personal fight. And that feeling right there, that's the core of what we're going to explore. So what does this wrestling actually look like in practice? Well, to get our heads around it, we're going to use a kind of case study, a story from all the way back in the 9th century BC, the story of the prophet Elijah. His journey is going to be our map for understanding this whole concept. Now, you have to understand, Elijah wasn't just some random prophet. This guy was a huge deal. I mean, he was taken directly into heaven without dying. And then, centuries later, he shows up alongside Moses during one of the most important moments in the New Testament. So that tells you, his story has a lesson of the absolute highest order. When this guy's on the scene, you need to pay attention. You'll notice that mountains play a huge role in these kinds of stories, and that is absolutely not a coincidence. Think about it symbolically. A mountaintop is the place where heaven and earth meet, right? It's a point of contact between the human world and the divine world. It's a place where real transformation can happen. Okay, so let's set the scene for Elijah's story. We find ourselves in a kingdom that is in a deep, deep crisis. It's being ruled by a pretty weak king, Ahab, and his incredibly powerful and frankly dangerous wife, Queen Jezebel. And here's where the main conflict really kicks off. Under Queen Jezebel's influence, the whole kingdom basically abandons its traditional god Yahweh and starts worshiping Baal. And Baal was a nature god, the god of fertility and, crucially, rain. This wasn't just swapping one deity for another. This was a fundamental shift in the entire society's value system. So Elijah's first big move, he prophesies a devastating drought. And this is such a powerful literary device. The physical drought becomes a perfect symbol for a spiritual one. When a society's values become corrupt and hollow, the very water of life just dries up, both literally and figuratively. And the story just brilliantly lays out the moral stakes with these two polar opposite female figures. On one side, you've got the arrogant and corrupt Queen Jezebel, whose selfishness is poisoning the whole kingdom. And on the other, a poor, nameless widow. She has nothing, but she offers Elijah what little she has. She embodies this idea that a healthy society is built on people looking out for each other, not on selfish power. Now, a conflict this big can't stay symbolic forever. It has to come to a head, and it does in a huge, dramatic, public showdown on Mount Carmel. It's going to be Elijah, all by himself, against 450 prophets of the new god Baal. So the challenge is pretty simple. Whichever god can light a fire on a sacrificial altar is the true god. Baal's prophets go first. They pray, they chant, they shout for hours, and nothing. Crickets. Then it's Elijah's turn. He actually mocks them, and then he ups the ante, making the task seem impossible. He has them drench his altar in water, over and over. Then he says a simple prayer, and bam, fire comes down from heaven and consumes everything. A total, undeniable, spectacular victory. And the result? It's immediate. The drought that had been crippling the land for years, it ends. An abundance of rain returns. The story's making a really clear point here. When you restore the proper moral order, life and abundance come rushing back. The spiritual crisis is solved, and the physical world heals. You would think that's the end of the story, right? The hero wins, the kingdom is saved, roll the credits, but it's not. Not even close. In fact, Elijah's true wrestle hasn't even begun yet. So despite this incredible public victory, Queen Jezebel is furious and wants him dead. So Elijah flees. He runs for his life deep into the wilderness. He won the big public battle, but now he has to face this absolutely crushing battle inside himself. And listen to what he says. After seeing fire fall from heaven and the rains return, he's completely hopeless. He feels utterly alone and defeated. And that's such a crucial point, isn't it? A massive external success can mean absolutely nothing when you're facing internal despair. So it's here, in total isolation, in a cave, completely cut off from the world, that the next and most important stage of his journey begins. This kind of sensory deprivation is exactly the kind of environment where you can finally start to hear what's really going on inside. God tells him to stand on the mountain, and then all hell breaks loose. There's a mighty wind, a huge earthquake, and a raging fire. All these symbols of raw, spectacular power, just like on Mount Carmel. But here's the twist. God isn't in any of them. He's in the still, small voice that comes after all the noise. And that's the ultimate revelation of the entire story. The real truth isn't in the big, loud spectacle. It's in the quiet, internal whisper. So, let's bring this all together. Why does this ancient story matter so much? How does Elijah's journey from the public spectacle to the private whisper explain what it truly means to wrestle with God? Well, to really get the transformation that's happening here, we need to look at one key word, the Greek word for the soul or spirit, psyche, which is the root of our word psychology. It literally means butterfly. And that's not just a piece of trivia. It's an incredibly powerful metaphor. And that idea is baked right into these stories. The actual word used in the Greek New Testament for the Transfiguration, that event where Elijah reappears, is metamorpho. It's directly linked to the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. The soul isn't meant to stay the same. It's meant to transform, radically. And this right here is the core idea. Elijah's journey from the fiery spectacle to the quiet whisper is the metamorphosis. The struggle with chaos, with despair, with the divine, that is the wrestling. It's not an obstacle getting in the way of growth. It is the engine of growth itself. So we end with this question for you. If the story of Elijah is telling us that the most profound truth isn't found in the dramatic, noisy victory, but in the whisper that can only be heard after the struggle, well, it leaves us to wonder, doesn't it? What chaos must we be willing to face? What silence must we be willing to enter to find our own transformation?